Kyiv, Ukraine, August 24, 2025. Amid the echoes of war, Ukraine marked its Independence Day with ceremony, symbolism and defiance. The day carried more weight than ever as foreign leaders stood alongside President Volodymyr Zelensky. Among them was Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, whose presence underscored Ottawa's unwavering support for Kyiv at a critical moment in the conflict. Carney's arrival in Kyiv was captured by cameras as he walked into Independence Square to join Zelensky. Their handshake, firm and deliberate, was more than a diplomatic formality. It was a statement of solidarity. Together, they walked toward lecterns prepared for the ceremony, side by side, signalling to Moscow and the wider world that Ukraine continues to have international backing in its struggle. Zelensky opened the ceremony with a message of resilience. Speaking firmly, he praised Ukraine's soldiers, citizens and allies abroad. His words carried urgency, reminding Ukrainians that their fight for freedom is not just national, but universal, a stand for democracy itself. As troops stood in formation nearby, their presence was a vivid reminder that independence in Ukraine has been purchased and defended with blood. The symbolism of Carney's attendance was equally powerful. Canada has emerged as one of Ukraine's strongest supporters since the start of Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, providing billions in military aid and training for tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers. Carney reinforced that commitment with his remarks at the podium. "Mr. President, it is an honour," he said, pledging continued support from Ottawa. His words, brief but firm, were aimed not only at Ukrainians but also at allies across NATO. The two leaders embraced warmly, a moment of human connection amid the formality of statecraft. That gesture, broadcast across Ukraine, carried weight, demonstrating that the alliance is not just political, but personal. Carney stressed that Canada's support would not waver, promising continued weapons deliveries, humanitarian aid and enforcement of sanctions against Russia. For ordinary Ukrainians in the crowd, the day was deeply emotional. Independence Day has always been a celebration, but now it is also a declaration of survival. Families waved flags and children too young to know peacetime joined in the ceremonies. They are growing up under the shadow of war, but their pride and determination remain unshaken. The programme blended military precision with cultural tradition. Troops marched in formation, bands played national songs and flags unfurled against the Kyiv skyline. It was both a display of strength and a reminder of the costs borne since Russia's invasion. Behind the scenes, Zelensky and Carney also spoke privately, discussing Ukraine's reconstruction, the need for long-term security guarantees, and the country's aspirations for NATO and European Union membership. Archival footage shown during the ceremony highlighted Canada's consistent role in Ukraine's defence, from training soldiers under Operation Unifier to providing lethal aid and spearheading sanctions enforcement. For Canada, this partnership has become a cornerstone of its foreign policy, and for Ukraine, it represents a lifeline. As the ceremony came to a close, Zelensky and Carney departed the stage together, waving to the crowd. The image was unmistakable. Ukraine remains unbroken, and Canada stands firmly at its side. On this Independence Day, Ukraine did more than commemorate the past. It declared its survival in 2025, celebrated its sovereignty, and highlighted its enduring partnerships. Against a backdrop of war, sacrifice, and resilience, the Ukrainian flag flew high over Kyiv, a symbol of freedom shared by all who continue to stand with the country in its darkest hour.
Пані та панове, прем'єр-міністр Канади Марк Карні.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney joins Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky at a ceremony in Kyiv to celebrate the war-torn country's Independence Day. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney arrives for the Ukraine Independence Day ceremony. He greets and shakes hands with Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney walked to lecterns during the ceremony for Ukraine's Independence Day. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney looks on as Zelensky speaks. Ukrainian troops stand at the ceremony. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky delivers his remarks. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stand together during the ceremony. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says, "Mr. President, it is an honour." Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky shake hands and embrace. They then return to the lecterns during the ceremony,